Okay, we are now recording. There are three things we're going to do with the data set. First, we're going to filter out duplicate records so we can go from individuals to households. Then we're going to go into a pivot table and see how inside of a pivot table you can do a little bit of filtering. We've kind of done some of that, but we haven't really formalized it. And then we're going to see, well, what if I want to filter before I ever get in the pivot table? And there are reasons to do that. And sometimes it's a better move. So first, how do I get individual households? Well, this is the variable. We talked about this before. You see these serial variables repeated. Oops. That's 4 people from one household. So for the individual data, it's great. For the household data, it's repeated. I got to get those out. It isn't that hard. Excel has a tool that does it. Now the first step, though, is select all your data, copy it to someplace else, because you do not want to mess up your original data. I don't want to lose the 22,000, roughly 22,000 individuals. I want a different data set that takes those out. And once I've got that, I can just click a cell in there, go to your data tab, and gosh, there's one that says remove duplicates. Told you it's pretty easy. And it says, well, what do you want to remove based on? Well, fortunately, I already know that serial number is the code for the house. So I want to remove duplicate serial numbers. Because my data is already sorted, person number 1 is the first person, this is going to work fine. Because what it's going to do, it's going to find this 66 and just keep the first line and wipe out the next 2. So person 2 and 3 from that household will go away. It's going to find the 206 and wipe out the second one. Person 1 is going to stay. There only is one person in 345, that'll stay there. For the 485s, it'll keep person 1 and it'll wipe out person 2, 3, and 4. You just say OK, and it's that fast. It wiped out almost 13,000 duplicate values. And now I have one record for each household, and it's person number 1 in every household. And I didn't mess up my individual data. I still got my almost 22,000 individuals. And now I've got my slightly over 9,000 households. Real common tool. You're going to want to do that sometimes. The other one he said was filtering inside of a pivot table. So I'm going to actually go back to the individual data because I just want to show that. And, oh, what should we look at? Marital status, that's a good one. We've looked at this one before. Click a single cell, make my pivot table. There it is. Drag marital status. I think I went too far. There it is, MARST. Unlike the Hathaway cycles, it's just coded with numerals, but that's okay. We can look up what they mean. Married, spouse present, married, spouse absent, separated, divorced, widowed, never married. It's frightening that I already know that, by memory, obviously. I want to count, not sum. So out of my 22,000, that's what I've got. And as usual, I don't like raw numbers. I want to see it as percent of column. There we are.
So,
yes.
I was not able to remove any duplicates.
Okay, I'll have to look at that one later because, well, depending on your data, depending on the variables, you might not. So the problem here is I've got everybody. I'm asking for marital status for everybody. That might be a silly question for kids. We talked about this before. So in the pivot table, I can drag to filters, age, and I can just take out, oops, anybody under 18. And notice it's going to change. Right now I've got 42% married with spouse present. And watch what happens when you take all the kids out. And when you're finding kids as under 18, obviously we could argue about the definition of adulthood based on voting age and drinking age and all kinds of issues, but we'll stick with this. Well, that makes more sense. It jumps to 54% of my adults are married with spouse present. And that's a common filtering. Other variables I could look at, I could filter on gender, I could filter on all kinds of things. And that's filtering inside the pivot table. That can be very useful, and it's pretty commonly done. But sometimes it makes more sense to filter before you ever get to the pivot table. So look at the household data again. I don't want to mess up my original data. So I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to take all of my households, copy to a separate sheet, and I'm going to even relabel this sheet filtering. This is not the filtered data, it's where I'm doing the filtering. I could do it in the original household data, but I have almost a paranoia about messing up my original data. So I'm going to copy it over and do it all here. Same tab, and there's a filter. Doesn't do much except add a bunch of weird little arrows. So let's look at variables we've already kind of messed with before. Household income and home value. Well, we got a couple things. We got those negatives that were kind of weird. We got zeros. And of course we have the 99999s. So I could take those out this way. And income, we talked about whether or not zero is legitimate income. I'll leave it for now. And over here, the numbers change colors. But you don't see a whole lot else going on. You still see the row numbers, except row number 4 is missing. It's not really missing, it's temporarily filtered out. So if you go to the bottom, you're still going to see that you're down at 9198, just like over in the household data. So it's not telling you how many records got taken out. You don't really know. But some got filtered out. Go over to the home value. Same issue. We said, well, zeros made no sense. We think that's rental. The 999s we knew were bad data. More get filtered out. That might be all I need to filter. That might be enough to do whatever analysis I want to do. And for the moment, we'll say that's all I wanted to do, just so you can see what it does. Now, on the filtering sheet, you select all your data, copy it. Now you kind of start seeing where data was actually taken out by the green lines. Paste it. So how many do I really have? Okay, I went from about 9,000 to down around 6,000. I wiped out almost 3,000 with that filter. And this is the filtered data. How much do you want to filter before you analyze it? Well, it depends what you're going to look at. You can overfilter. You have other ways, by the way, to filter. I'm going to actually take the household income just to show it to you and filter it differently. Got this number filter thing. You can actually do a between. So greater than or equal to 0 and less than or equal to, since the largest income we already saw was 1.2 million, I'll just say 2 million. So I can wipe out those 999s that way. And you won't see much difference because it doesn't show you, but that's a legitimate filter. You got all those tools. You can filter specific values out. You can filter all kinds of different number values out. But every time you filter, we just lost 3,000 records. And we lost good data based on what variable you're analyzing. When I filtered out some of the income, well, I lost some good household values. When I filter out household values, I lost some good income data. So it depends on what you're going to analyze. You can definitely overfilter. Here's an example. Let's say I want to take these individual households. I wanted to have, we'll call it good data for household income and home value, but I want to look at their utility bills. I got a whole bunch of utility bill variables here. The cost of electric. Just like everything else, it's got these various 99 codes that tell you those are not valid data points. 3 of them for the cost of gas, for cost of water per year, there's a couple of them. The cost of other heating fuel, there's a couple of them. So I filtered a bunch, and that's why if I want to analyze utilities, this might make sense. But now I'll do the same thing. This is the filtering sheet, and copy this over to what would be filtered data. and see what's left. And we started with over 9,000 households. I'm down to about 350 households. I was so strict in saying, wait a minute, I want to have good cost of gas, cost of water, cost of heating, cost of electric. I did so much filtering that I've lost the vast majority of my data. I've probably over-filtered. So you don't want in the filtering stage to take out stuff that is, for whatever you're looking at, isn't relevant. If I was really looking at income distribution, why would I filter out things with bad electric data? If I'm looking at bad electric data, why would I filter out things with bad home values? I want to do appropriate filtering based on what I'm going to look at once it's actually filtered. So I said 351 homes is a lot less than the 9,000 I started with. But that is how you filter. So this is 3 steps. The original data, you don't mess with it. The sheet where you're doing your filtering, and you can turn the filters off at any time, just kill it. And then the sheet where the filtered data is copied to. You don't want to make a pivot table out of the filtering sheet. It's the filtered sheet where now you would make the pivot table and do whatever kind of analysis you're going to do. Knowing that at this point, based on whatever your reasons were for the filtering you did, oops, you now have 6,000 instead of 9,000 homes. But if you had legitimate reasons to filter that out, that's not a problem. The one that's down to 300 homes kind of bothers me. So part 2 of your lab will be, I will tell you what filtering to do, but it will be filtering assignments off the original data set. So that's the end of the recording.